This is Dateline News and Conversation. My guests tonight, they're regulars on the show, Dr. Vladimir Kozin and Stanislav Kraprivnik. Tonight, we're going to talk about three very important topics. Number one, everybody's talking about depleted uranium, DU. Both of my guests know something about DU. We're going to talk about, in response to the UK and the United States, really, about to send depleted uranium to Ukraine, Putin is putting nuclear weapons in Belarus. And then we'll get an update on the conflict, Bakhmut, and in general, a special military operation. So to begin with, I first want to say welcome to the three of you. And it's so great to have you on the show, especially speaking about these topics. So, Stas, I'm going to go to you first. For those who may not know who you are, you're a Russian-born American citizen who joined the United States Army, became a captain, and was a tank commander. Stas, what can you tell me about depleted uranium from the point of view as an American in the United States Army?
Little bit of correction. I wasn't just tank commander. I commanded 2 tank platoons in my time.
Much more.
So each one's 4 tanks. As far as depleted uranium, and I'm dual citizenship. I'm also a Russian citizen. As far as depleted uranium, in this case, the depleted uranium that they're sending, as far as I know, is possibly limited to Challenger 120 millimeter rifled barrel rounds. But they may be sending the majority of depleted uranium rounds are in the 20 to 25 millimeter Mike range. Those are used by the Bradley autocannon, which is something they pulled off of an F-15. So F-15s, F-16s use them. Apache gunships use them. So pretty wide use. What you have is when you enrich uranium for nuclear power plants, you put uranium in a centrifuge, you spin it, and you get the lighter 253 more radioactive element isotope coming up to the top, and then you get the 258 coming down, and that's the depleted uranium. That's part of the enrichment process. So you separate out the 258, which is the less radioactive isotope. And the isotope in this case, 258, is a beta particle. So you have 3 types of radiation. You have alpha and gamma, which are rays, energy rays, and you have beta, which is an actual particle, has mass. So they had all this slag material left over from the 50s and, well, the 60s, 70s. And at one point, they actually decided to make bicycles out of it. Well, the public didn't go for it. So they found out it was slightly radioactive. When I mean slightly radioactive, beta particle, the radiation that a beta particle releases cannot go through your skin. It can't go through a sheet of paper. I mean, it's that light radiation. So when but that also makes it actually relatively dangerous in its own way. So what you have is for the Abrams tanks, for example, which are smoothbore. So the rounds that the Challengers use cannot be used in any of the other NATO tanks, which are all smoothbore cannons, because they're designed for a rifled cannon. So what happens is when you shoot the round, back part of it is the casing, which in this case is a chemical compound that cardboard, and it burns away. You just have a back plate with I can't see me right there. And you have a back plate, and you have a spike coming out of the back plate that sends the electric current that sets off the charge. That ejects out. The casing burns off because it's cardboard, chemically treated cardboard, so it just vaporizes. The front part of the round flies out. You have two ceramic plastic petals that fly off that take up the entire size of the barrel, the 120 millimeter barrel. They fly off when the penetrator exits, and you have a lawn dart that's actually it's about a meter and a half long, about a meter long lawn dart that's flying out. So that's the uranium penetrator, and has a thin topping of tungsten steel on it. What makes it dangerous is it's not just dense. The uranium penetrator burns. It starts to melt. It's going twice the speed of sound. So for people who don't understand what that means, if you stand 100 meters behind a tank, the tank will hit a target 2 kilometers away in a straight line shot. It'll hit a target 2 kilometers away before you hear the report of the gun that's 100 meters in front of you. Twice the speed of sound. So when that penetrator makes contact with the enemy tank or whatever else it's hitting, at this point the penetrator is burning, so it's melting and it's burning, and it burns its way through the enemy tank. It can burn its way through the other end of the enemy tank, for that matter, especially if it's a steel hull. Which, by the way, if the tank is buttoned down, for example, when tanks button down, they have their own overpressurized atmosphere inside. That's to keep any gases from coming into any gas coming into the turret, into the body of the tank. When that round burns through one end, goes through that tank, and burns through the other end, it creates a vacuum. So if the tank is buttoned down, the hatches are buttoned down, the 2 to 3 individuals in that turret will all get sucked out the other end. So 3 bodies are trying to fit through a hole that's about that big. Very nasty. If the hatches are open, then no, there won't be any overpressurization, so nothing that'll happen, but it'll just burn its way through, and if anybody's in its way, it'll burn their way through there. If there are any rounds in its way, it'll set them off, of course. So that's how the uranium penetrator works. The problem starts with uranium, as depleted uranium is the 258 beta particle. Is when uranium burns, it combines with 2 oxygen atoms, and you get uranium dioxide. Uranium dioxide is a very, very fine dust, yellow dust. In the 20s of last century, it was used as an additive for yellow paint until they figured out that it was actually radioactive. So what you get is uranium dioxide, and it's in this very microfilament dust that goes through most filters. And the tank's burning, so it kicks up into the air, and it starts falling out everywhere. The radiation, again, this is a beta particle, so the radiation from this beta particle cannot go through your skin, can't go through your clothes. Problem is everybody's breathing. So you suck it into your lungs, you drink it in contaminated water, you eat it on your food, it goes through open wounds in your skin, and it gets into your bloodstream. And that's when the magic begins. Because beta particles, what happens when you get radiated with a gamma ray or a less powerful alpha ray, they're still both, even alpha ray is still powerful enough that radiation that's going through would just burn, pop and burn whatever cells in your body that happen to be in its way. So whether it's all body or just a partial body irradiation, the cells in that area will die. There won't be any cancer. There won't be anything of that sort because the cells are dead and burned. It's major burns. And people die from radiation poisoning, in this case, from high volume radiation poisoning. They die either in hours or in weeks. It all depends what dose their body got. And the cells are just dying. It's high burns. What happens with a beta particle when it's in your body is it cannot kill the cells. It doesn't have enough energy output to kill the cells. it does have enough energy output to start scrambling the DNA in those cells. And once it's in your blood, it's going to go past every one of your cells in your body, because all your cells need blood. They need the oxygen, they need the sugar that the blood carries. So everywhere there are capillaries, sooner or later, that dosage is going to go through and go by everything, including your sperm cells. So I went into ROTC at NC State in spring of 1991. By fall of 1991, we were getting new cadre. There were veterans from the Gulf War, and we were getting new guys coming in as cadets who were veterans from the Gulf War. The difference is the cadre were officers already, and the cadets were either enlisted or sergeants that come back, demobilized, left the army, went into the university, and went into ROTC. So by 1992, second half of 91, begin 92, is when these guys' wives started giving birth. That's when you started noticing the first wave of what it does. Lots of birth defects, heart conditions, babies were dying. Well, first of all, lots of miscarriages. Babies were dying from heart conditions, leukemia, where there were no family traits of leukemia, family history, and so on. And then the guys themselves started getting sick, a lot of them following that. All kinds of things were happening. And guys that were major, who was in special forces, who could outrun most of the 18-year-olds, and within a short period of less than 2 years, he was a full invalid. And the U.S. Army, by the way, doesn't like to pay compensation too much. So it's yet to admit, just like with Agent Orange, it is yet to admit that anything that was contaminated was its fault, and that their beta particle radiation actually does any damage. I had a friend who was in the second Gulf War. He's got 3 kids. I mean, the guy's 42, I think. Total 100% invalid. He can barely move. So, and the degradation went over about 5 years, 6 years. It took 7 years of fighting with the Army to actually get them to pay for compensation, some amount of compensation, because they just refused to pay anything. That's the U.S. military. If for anybody that is clueless about it and thinks that, the recruiter promises you'll be taken care of medically, yeah, okay. And there's nightmares you can tell about the VA hospitals too, where the doctors that can't get licensed in any state, they go work for the VA, the federal government, because they don't require licensing, state licensing anyways. So yeah, and like I said, the U.S. government isn't out to compensate anybody. My injured knee, I wound up paying out of my own pocket for surgery because, again, U.S. Military refused to pay or refused to acknowledge it, and so on. So these guys are suffering, and I saw the suffering that a lot of these guys are having: leukemia, heart problems, and so on. So yes, I know a little bit about depleted uranium and what it does. In a wet climate like Yugoslavia, it will eventually wash off because it's a wet climate. There's rain; it'll go in the creeks. Of course, it'll eventually make its way out to the Black Sea. It'll poison the fish around there, as it goes through. So it'll keep kicking back into some amount. It'll keep kicking back into the food chain as small fish eats big fish, and eventually human eats whatever is eating the fish or the other fish. So it'll keep kicking in for a while, but it'll eventually, most of it will wash out to the Black Sea, where it dissipates in a giant body of water. So it happened with Yugoslavia. In a place like Iraq, in the desert, it's there for whatever the half-life of it is to the end, a couple hundred years. So it's in the dust. It'll get kicked up anytime there's a dust storm. A vehicle drives over it, what have you. It'll always get kicked back up in the air. It's a microfine dust. So it'll be there for next, I don't know how many generations.
Stas, I have to ask you, there's 2 parts to this question. Number one, what kind of weapons does depleted uranium appear in, is used in the United States military? Is it artillery shells? Is it fired from tanks, or what? The other part of the question is, what is it specifically they'll be sending to Ukraine? Anti-tank type things, or for the tanks that they're getting? I don't have any idea, and I think most people also don't have an idea.
Okay, the majority of depleted uranium rounds are in the 20 to 25 millimeter range, because that's autocannons. They're small, relatively small rounds. They're small dose of uranium compared to depleted uranium compared to a 120 millimeter penetrator round, kinetic penetrator. So it's used in everything. It's used in the Bradleys and the A-10 Warthog, which is a ground attack aircraft. It's used in Apache helicopters in the autocannons. It's used in F-15s, F-16s. It's used for artillery. It can be used for artillery, though not that often. It's really, I think, all of America's and I think UK's penetrator rounds are depleted uranium. Well, not all. There are titanium rounds that we use as training, because a titanium round will not go through the Chobane armor. That's on the tank. So in case during training, tank shoots tank, it shouldn't kill the other tank. Not for real. And things like that have happened. We had some guys in Bradley's get killed on a range because they went too far forward and they got mistaken for a target by tank crews. Got fired and everybody died in that Bradley. Things like that happen. Unfortunate, but they do happen. So the rounds that are being sent to the UK are for the Challenger tanks. There are only 10 Challenger tanks being sent, so this is less than a company of tanks. So you're probably looking about maybe 30, 40. Well, there'll probably be at least 4 battle loads. You're probably looking about somewhere around 500 rounds. And it may be sent in 20 Mike range, but that would be for the Bradleys. For the the Bradleys are actually 25 Mike. So it'd be for the Bradleys and it'd be maybe for the Martyrs. But I'm not sure the Germans would use it. But the Bradleys would use them. They do use them in the U.S. Army. So
how big a deal is this? Sending these depleted uranium shells to Ukraine. How big a deal is that?
Well, as far as mass use, it's not going to be mass use at this point because it's 10 tanks. As far as zones of contamination, well, yeah, I mean, they're going to burn. Whatever they hit, they're going to burn. That's going to go up into the atmosphere, and that's going to go on and have fallout. It'll be relatively localized because there won't be that many rounds shot. My suggestion is exterminate those tanks and their crews as fast as possible before they get a chance to shoot anything, and let it burn in the walls somewhere on the Polish border and let them suck it down into their lungs, since they're so gun-ho and happy for war. Okay, I'm bloodthirsty. I won't deny that. But again, it depends what volume of fire is released. At this point, it's not going to be that much. If NATO's stupid enough to walk in this war, they will use it widespread. That's beyond question, because the American Apaches, Bradleys, Challenger tanks, and British Challenger tanks, and American Abrams tanks are all armed with depleted uranium rounds. That's a standard round loadout.
Okay, wow, that was quite something. Thank you for that. And I figured out when you were talking, you talk about Mike, and I figured, what the heck? And then I figured it's millimeter, right?
Yeah, millimeter.
Okay, I'm going to go over now to Vladimir.
Yes.
What can you tell us about depleted uranium?
Well, actually, the layout and the composition of depleted uranium munition was very in very detailed expressed by Stas. What I have at my disposal, NATO countries used this kind of DU munition in 17 countries. The Russian Federation says that it has not used it at all, though it is said that Russian armor-piercing ammunition is used tungsten. Is it all right for Wolfram in Russian? Stas, is it okay?
Tungsten.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Tungsten.
Yeah, no problem.
Absolutely non-harmful in terms of radiation because it doesn't emit any kind of yellow dust as nanoparticles of uranium. We are in favor of introducing a global total ban on depleted uranium munitions. But first of all, to enforce quickly moratorium on producing and using and deployment of depleted uranium munitions everywhere on a global scale. But seemingly it will be very difficult to get such draft treaty banning depleted uranium munitions globally because NATO countries will definitely oppose this kind of move. The UN General Assembly session started to pay attention to this kind of weapon from 2007. But as far as you know, and other people know, that UN General Assembly session resolutions have only the character of recommendation. They are not obligatory to implement. So that's the problem. The other thing is that I would like to add that President Vladimir Putin referred to a potential appearance of DU ammunition in Ukraine, but actually there are a number of other factors we took into consideration when we took a decision to deploy tactical nuclear weapons in our neighboring and united state called Republic of Belarus or Belarusia. It's all the same. What else? What else? Certainly it's a very deadly composition hidden in these arrows or darts or rods made of uranium-3 38 and a small portion of uranium-235. But it doesn't matter. Both are harmful for human beings, for cattle, for vegetation, for water, for crops, etc., etc. Better not to calculate, not to catalog them all. A lot of diseases. I have been in Kosovo soon after the NATO bombardment took place in 1999. I was there in 2001, soon after, 2 years after, 1 year and a half. And I didn't know about the case of using depleted uranium. But later on, I realized, and I have a kind of it's called tumor, a kind of bulb, like half of apple on my body. I'm just showing this. And after this DU story, I have to consult professionals. What does it mean? Is it a kind of called in Russian opухоль, a kind of swallow, a kind of shishka? I don't know what does it mean, but when I asked a surgeon to cut it off, he decided better not. I approached several times. They refused to cut off this bulb from me. But it doesn't matter. It's a private story, and I'm not sure what does it mean for me. It doesn't matter. The most important, I have still a head, hands, and feet. So what else? I was very much surprised when Secretary General of the IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, Mr. Rafael Grossi, who recently visited Zaporozhye nuclear power plant for the second time in his life, he publicly said that depleted uranium produces no harm to human beings. Yes, it's very um, unprofessional statement by the head of the IAEA, especially dealing with the radioactive material in terms of nuclear power plants, etc. Not with weapons, but it doesn't matter. So this story is going on. And final brush in this part of my remarks. While the UK Deputy Secretary of Defense, Baroness Goldie, announced on the 20th of March at the House of Lords that the UK would send such ammunition to Ukraine. Actually, the campaign for nuclear disarmament in UK has expressed a quite opposite opinion. This campaign that is very popular around the world, as well as in European nations, as a staunch anti-nuclear supporter. They said that this ammunition have already arrived to Ukraine, but I don't know. I haven't heard or seen any confirmation that any type of such DU ammunition have been used in Ukraine so far. But Russian military men, servicemen, would definitely tell if they spot this kind of specific features of using DU munition. One guy who is working in Latvia, in Riga, and his good name is known, recently published a kind of essay, kind of short story, expose, by saying that a small level of radiation was spotted in the United Kingdom by now. He released his report the same month, March 2023. And he also insisted that a certain amount of radioactivity from depleted uranium flying around European continent as well. Well, it's very difficult to verify this information, but nevertheless, I mean, this kind of weapons should not be used like overall nuclear capabilities, because it will be the end of the civilization with only one privilege. Those guys who will use nukes in the first strike, they will have 15, 20 minutes more to leave. But nevertheless, inevitably, there will be also killed in 20 or 15 minutes time by the opposite number who has also nuclear capabilities, or two countries, namely the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China. Regis?
Okay, I would like to know a couple of things. Vladimir, depleted uranium, what other countries besides the United States, now we're talking about the United Kingdom, what other countries have depleted uranium and can actually manufacture these shells? Do you know?
I mean, those countries who have already acquired nuclear capabilities, the United Kingdom, Republic of France, probably some others who never produced nuclear shells or rounds or bombs or rockets, but produces nuclear fuel for nuclear power plants, because Stas was right. What is the original of production of the depleted uranium? So many countries in NATO, they do not have neither nuclear arms production facilities or nuclear power plants, so they cannot produce this kind of thing. But they can buy ready-made shells or artillery rounds from NATO arms market, because NATO attack weapons has universal characteristics and should be and can be exchanged very rapidly because of its universal character of the diameter, the caliber, etc., etc. So, but unfortunately, so far we has not got any international treaty or agreement on banning DU ammunition. That's very bad.
Okay, Vladimir, does Russia produce and manufacture depleted uranium weapons?
I have not heard any story about this. I've got the impression that we are producing armor piercing attack ammunition by using tungsten, or wolfram in Russian.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Which is more expensive, but it doesn't matter. We have plenty of natural tungsten. And in terms of penetrating capability, the ammunition either with DU or tungsten are almost all the same.
Okay, thank you, Vladimir. Stas, anything else you would like to add to this discussion about depleted uranium before we move on?
Well, technically, no. I mean, technologically, everything's been said. Is what it is. That the U.S. government, well, I mean, can't say very many good things about the U.S. government these days. For many days, they know it's radioactive. Grossi is a shill, is a bond paid for shill. It's the same guy that said basically he standing there, he couldn't tell who's shelling the nuclear power plant in Zaporozhye. Right. Okay. As they were trying to make. Okay, I'm not going to go down that road because it's a whole separate show you can do on Grossi. But the fact is, these are paid for shows and nothing more. And you can't trust any word that anybody in that organization, vassal state, says. Which, by the way, if you look at his organization, it's all Western Europeans or Americans, except for one Serb that was there. And yet China has nuclear power plants. India has nuclear power plants. You know, none of those countries are represented, or Russia is the biggest producer of nuclear power plants in the world. So, anyways, it is what it is. Okay, the U.S. government knows, they have known, and they don't give a damn. Just like they don't give a damn about Agent Orange, even when it kills their own veterans. Because once the soldiers served, he's no longer needed. And if he dies off a little faster, then that's less money you have to spend on him as a veteran. So
Okay,
it is what it is.
Let me ask you this, Stas. Two questions. Russia recently has said that they've sent nuclear weapons to Belarus at the request of the Belarusian government, the President Lukashenko. How do you see this? Was this a direct response to the UK saying they're going to send depleted uranium, or was it just a defensive measure?
Well, first of all, things like that, this has been already planned out, worked out, and Belarus has been asking for nuclear weapons on its territory for a while. This has absolutely nothing to do with depleted uranium. I'm very much hoping a carpet bombing campaign will take care of depleted uranium and exterminate anybody around it to teach them a lesson once and for all. But I digress. The nuclear weapons in Poland are well, they're a mirror of what America has been doing in Europe. Let's not forget, first of all, there are 6 European countries that have American forward station nuclear weapons. Germany, Turkey, Turkey's pseudo-European, but okay. Germany, Turkey, Belgium, Italy, UK, and I'm missing one. Either Norway or Denmark, if I remember correctly. They have forward station nuclear weapons. The Netherlands, yes, Netherlands. Yeah. And Poland is begging for them.
Yeah.
So when the U.S. says they're shocked, as the State Department always loves to say, it's reckless behavior and shocked. It's the alcoholic talking to the once in a while drinker that, you're being an alcoholic, you're not a responsible drinker. It's about the same level. But what this does do for NATO is, particularly the most aggressive member of NATO outside of America and the UK. The most aggressive member of NATO is, of course, Poland, drunk on power as usual when it's backed by somebody bigger, and with dreams of rebuilding the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth Empire. Poland has stood up a new infantry division on the Belarusian border, has brought in several brigades of militia. They're training up and are pulling up another 200,000 soldiers they want to put in under arms. And most of that is being stacked on the Belarusian border. Poland was a curator of the last failed color revolution. It stood up Nazi battalions of Belarus liberals that ran. Part of those are fighting in Ukraine. Part of those are being stacked up on the Polish border with the idea that they can start another attempt at color revolution. They can seize a border town. Poland walks into that. Well, they declare independence, or the quote legitimate government of Belarus, and Poland can walk in and use that as a excuse to start invading and annexing Belarus. Well, creating protectorates. Nuclear weapons inside of Belarus, even though they're not Belarusian, is a huge red light for the Poles. It's one of those moments where they stop and they think about changing their underwear, because if they go into against nuclear weapons, quite literally. This is they are at that point where they are now risking Warsaw being wiped off the face of the earth once and for all. So that's now paused the Poles, at least partially. Whether it brings any common sense to the Poles, being a pessimist, I highly doubt. It'll at least temporarily pause them, maybe buy us time. Unfortunately, I think their taste for adventure is way outpaced their ability to comprehend common sense and risk. But at least for now, that's the reason NATO all of a sudden starts screaming when there's a mirror image, 1/6 the mirror image of what the U.S. does. So okay. It's been planned for. It's just been now announced. All these announcements when things happen behind the scenes, they're already being worked on and they're already happening. Just same thing with any weapon deliveries to Ukraine. When they announce it, count that those weapons are already in place.
let me ask you this, and then I'm going to send it back to Vladimir. Why, in your opinion, has Russia not eliminated the entry point to Ukraine through Poland? It's well known. I guess that's one of the only places that all of this stuff can come through. Why isn't it that Russia has not bombed all of those roads and railroads through which the stuff comes in? Do you have an opinion on this?
Well, first of all, let's understand it comes in through many entry points. There's more than just one road. So the entire Polish-Ukrainian border, Hungary, thank God, at least is one country that has said no. Slovakia, on the other hand, is an entry point, and so is Romania. Also, entry points are aircraft, transport aircraft that can easily fly over into Lvov and unload in Lvov. Why we haven't blown all of that to hell, I don't know. As a military person, I mean, these are political decisions above my pay grade. But as a military person, I can say the first thing you're going to do on a strategic level like this is wipe out any entry points and continue bombing them. Carpet bomb the railroad tracks. So they have to have massive amounts of work to rebuild them, continue to hit them. Not with targeted strikes, but with carpet bombing. So you wipe out everything around it too. Destroy the bridges, destroy everything. Yes, they're Soviet engineered bridges, so they're very, very hard to destroy because they're made to withstand nuclear strikes. But you can at least destroy the railroads. What the Ukrainians also do to understand, if we start doing this, we will be causing casualties, civilian casualties. I'm okay with this for the simple reason because the civilians know what the hell they're getting into. Because what the Poles are, what the Ukrainians are doing is the trains are coming in. You have a passenger car. You have one to two cars, rail cars, on which you have heavy equipment, and you have another passenger car. So they're using their own civilians as human shields. Those civilians know what's on those trains when they get on those trains. They know the role they're playing. They're not innocent people that have been duped onto these trains. So they're getting on the trains that they know are pulling military equipment that are legitimate targets in any military operation. Those trains are absolutely legitimate targets. So from that point. Secondly, lighter equipment like howitzers, armored personnel carriers. Well, not the Bradley because it's too damn tall, but the mortars. Those are being pulled on civilian trucks. They're covered inside a box container, or the tarp containers. They've got the tarp sides, so they're down and they look like any other truck. So you got 20-ton big rigs pulling those weapon systems in. Again, those are legitimate targets, and it's been advertised. I mean, they put up videos of everything. These guys are idiots. They like to brag about everything. So they got videos up of how they're camouflaging their equipment as they're pulling in. So yes, those are civilian rigs. Blow them up. That's my answer. You take out enough of them, the other civilian drivers at least are going to be paranoid to drive. They don't know they're actually risking something. But yeah, again, this is the same country, Ukraine, with the same back end NATO that use Red Cross ambulances to bring in troops to the front. There is no rule of law or war that the West has not broken and will continue to break. There are no rules of war. Let's begin with that. Rules of war which you impose on the weak. The strong in this case for the West comes in with the attitude of they'll do whatever the hell it takes, whatever they think is worth it, no matter how many civilian casualties are going to take it. So if we play by the rules that they set down for us, we're guaranteeing ourselves to lose. So we need to just look at it as realistically. And we are coming in with there are rules of war. There are no rules of war. Not when you're fighting basically in my view, it's a satanic regime in the West. And Ukraine is just part of that. The persecution of Christians, the persecution of everything. And they may not be out and out Satanists, but they are basically satanic regimes. And they don't believe in, they'll sacrifice anything and everybody to get whatever goals that they've set themselves. And that's what they're using human shields. So bite the bullet. The people know what they're doing when they're getting on those trains. So they know they're using themselves as human shields. Okay, take out the trains. Unfortunately, as a political decision right now, that hasn't been taken. From a military point of view, it's a perfectly legitimate target.
Okay, Vladimir.
Yeah.
I'll restate the question. Why has Russia refrained from eliminating all of those points of entry where all of these weapons have been coming in through? What is your opinion on that?
We are not afraid of destroying this columns and delivery system from NATO countries adjacent to Ukrainian territory. But my personal opinion is that we should be more and more active, because in any broad-based strategic operations or wars, regional wars, three major tasks should be implemented at one go. You see, not one by one, but all together immediately as a package blow. First, military and civilian administrative command and control system. Second, the opposite number warfighting machine. And third, Stas was right, destruction of all supply routes from foreign countries to Ukraine, for example, from any direction, because it's not like funny jokes, but it's fierce fighting. And our two countries and NATO mercenaries are losing a lot of people or wounded people, and destroy some economic wealth of our respective countries involved into this Ukrainian/NATO aggression. But we also destroyed a number of transportation aircraft carrying weapons not far away from Odessa, controlled by Ukraine, and also destroyed a number of convoys with heavy-duty trucks, also packed by different types of military hardware and ammunition. Because it would be very risky to rely upon resolving a third type of destroying of military logistic support just on the battle line, on the front line, on the battlefield, on lines of engagement. It would be too late, for example, for us, if Russia should be tackled, because the more weapons and the more ammunition will be driven to the line of engagement between Ukrainian, NATO, and Russian forces, the greater will be losses amongst the Russian servicemen and civilians, because Donbass is being shelled day in, day out, continuously without any interruption. And approximately 200, 300 different types of shells and rockets are pounding Donbass, specifically civilian populated areas and social infrastructure. I think that we are sometimes, saving this kind of equipment and ammunition for to offset imminent Ukrainian counteroffensive that has a lot of funny and sometimes suspicious information around it. But nevertheless, it's I think this problem is under strict control of the Russian General Staff and the Ministry of Defense and people on the ground, because if you see this supply line will be cut off or diminished considerably, that will be better for us. Look, 2 days ago, I looked through one American source, probably Defense One or something like that. It doesn't matter. But this figure surprised me very emotionally, that from the beginning of the aggression of Ukraine that started on February 14th last year, so far, the United States of America alone have supplied to the armed forces of Ukraine, look, 1,074,000 artillery shells and rocket missiles for HIMARSs with a caliber 155 only. More than 1 million. Just imagine if this this pack of ammunition will arrive close to the battlefront, to the front line. It will be no good for us. So we have to take this subject very seriously and to destroy without any remorses. Sometimes people are advocating in my country that sometimes Ukrainian side uses passenger trains that are moving this way or the other along Ukrainian territory. But that doesn't matter. It would be sufficient at least to destroy railroads without any carriages, without any locomotives, etc., etc. Just to destroy. Like during the Second World War, we have an operation called Рельсовая война or Railroad War. Soviet guerrillas or partisans, they mined a lot of railroad tracks and destroyed it, and it blocked urgent delivery of substantial armed warfare and ammunition from Nazi Germany to the heartland of Russia, of the Soviet Union. And we also just resolved the same task when we launched Operation Small Saturn. One of our strategic operations to destroy the sack, the cauldron of Nazi and Romanian and Italian divisions surrounded near Stalingrad, currently Volgograd, headed by Field Marshal Paulus. Small Saturn was operation added to Big Saturn, the giant military operation, comprehensive. But Small Saturn was specifically devoted to cut off supply routes, both on land and in the skies, by using air forces. And it was very rational and was very effective. That's why a lot of people, we've got near Stalingrad in 42, 43, a lot of Germans have been killed or just taken prisoners of war. Regis?
Well, I'm of the opinion, and I agree with Stas and Vladimir, I think you probably would too. The restraint that Russia has shown are not military decisions, they're political. They have to be. To allow 13,000, 15,000 people in the Donbass to have been killed, as you mentioned, daily for going on 9 years now is unbelievable, especially in the last year since they initiated the special military operation. I can't believe that Russia doesn't have the capability of taking them out. I don't care how fortified they are. But anyway, that's just my opinion as a civilian. We have about 6 minutes left. So I'd like your comments as brief as you can. I'm going to keep it with you, Vladimir, and then we'll finish with Stas. Everybody's talking about Bakhmut. That's the Ukrainian word, but it's Artyomovsk in Russian. Wagner has been saying that it is almost completely surrounded. My question is, what are they waiting for? So, Vladimir, from your perspective, what really is happening in Bakhmut? Is it a pivotal moment in the conduct of this war?
No, I don't think so, because there are plenty of other big cities like Bakhmut in Ukrainian that can be converted like strongholds en route to Kiev and in other areas in Ukraine. But nevertheless, it is very important. Whether it has been engulfed by 100% by now, no, not yet. Something like 75% of encirclement and 25%, I mean, free movement of the enemy in both directions into Bakhmut and from Bakhmut to the continental Ukraine. But this task will be gradually, implemented. Regis, if you permit me, I would like to add to the question you put to Stas concerning the reasons why we put tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus. Yes, Stas was right that depleted uranium ammunition, it was not the last or final explanation because it's not weapons of mass destruction, but real weapons of mass destruction, tactical and strategic nuclear capabilities, they are. And in recent years, the USA and NATO as organization, they have an increased reliance on their nuclear weapons in Europe, both tactical and strategic. And there are about 10 key factors that cannot be ignored by us. Certainly, it's a huge amount of tactical nuclear weapons of the United States of America. Stas already mentioned them. This is much more than official figures shared by Washington and by NATO countries. That's my calculation, personal, 400 instead of 200 US tactical nuclear weapon bombs. Another factor, all three NATO nuclear powers, France, UK, and USA, are taking part in NATO Air Force operation codenamed Baltic Air Policing in Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, and Estonia. And the number of the dual capable aircraft has increased when second round of aggression of Ukraine and NATO against us started last February. Americans are frequently using European airspace of NATO alliance, and NATO countries just have given landing rights or staging rights on the 19 military airfields for the US heavy strategic bombers that are certified to carry nuclear weapons. Another thing is that B-52H, like Hotel, heavy strategic bombers of the United States, have several times practiced drills to attack targets in the Baltic Sea area and in the Kaliningrad region specifically. I don't know what kind of type of nuclear bombs from the United States have been recently delivered to Europe, but the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament claims that a number of US bombs, nuclear tipped, have been returned to Lakenheath military base, Suffolk, the United Kingdom. And all our demands that U.S. tactical nuclear weapons should be repatriated to the continental USA have been met with a negative response. And we offered moratorium on non-deployment of the INF-related nuclear-tipped medium-range missiles in Europe, for example. Also got negative response from NATO alliance. A number of missile defense operational sites, namely in Romania, Deveselu, and in Poland, Redzikowa, can be easily converted into housing, inserting in the launching tubes, offensive cruise missiles, also with the nuclear warheads. And the final brush, the USA, NATO, and the UK and France, they are still committed to the first nuclear strike against us. And by the way, the last final brush to tactical nuclear weapons. There are several different terminologies, definitions of T and W, but none of them have been officially recognized because we never conducted any international or bilateral talks on limitation or reduction of tactical nuclear weapons. And we have only one criteria for defining, differentiating from T and W and strategic offensive nuclear arms. That is delivery range. So a tactical medium-range exercise with the tactical nuclear bombs will be considered tactical because of its limited distance. But if it is loaded on the heavy strategic bombers that can fly many thousand miles or kilometers, it requires immediately strategic capability. And it doesn't matter what kind of nuclear yield, rocket, air-launched cruise missiles, or free-fall nuclear bomb they can carry. The distance, not the radiation level, not the crater for the used bombs or rockets on the ground. So a lot of issues still unresolved. I finished my remarks. Yeah, sorry.
Well, thank you, Vladimir. Stas, we're going to go to you, and I would like you to comment only on your understanding of what is going on in Bakhmut.
Okay, well, for the listeners, Bakhmut has been fortified for 8 years. And by fortified, I mean bunkers, service points that support each other with fire, elevators that can actually lift up a cannon, for example, up to a firing position and lower it back down for when the return fire comes in, and so on, crisscrossed and hardened, plus human shields, as these are Eastern Ukrainians, well, Russians, that are being used as human shields. So from that point, it would take a long time. It's not just Bakhmut, by the way. Bakhmut is just the linchpin on this line. So some surrounding hills, the surrounding territories have also been fortified, and fortified continuously for 8 years. So yeah, getting through them and taking them out is hard work. On top of that, Bakhmut, because of political decisions, Bakhmut is strategic in that it's a logistics hub. It's the main linchpin on the Donbas defensive line, the main Donbas defensive line, and it opens up all kinds of territory for movement north, south, or west, which would be very hard to contain once that flower expands out, and then you've got armored columns going through in different directions. But additionally, Bakhmut is a meat grinder. It's a one-way meat grinder. So there's the incentive of why take it? Take enough of it to keep sucking the Ukrainians and the other and the Nazi supporters in. And they'll keep pouring troops in, and you keep turning the troops into meat. I mean, the casualty counts in Bakhmut are ridiculous. It's 7 to 8 to 1. I mean, these are fantasy numbers. These are like, the enemy tribe is running at you with spears, and you pull out a Maxim machine gun and just start mowing them down. Sure, you may lose a few guys, but you're going to kill a whole lot of them by and far. So this is about the same thing in this case. It's almost like fighting third world. I mean, third world present, but third world colonial war. They keep pushing people in. Bakhmut's in a low place to begin with, so it's surrounded by high ground. The high ground's been taken. They haven't closed. They are continuing to hold it one corridor open. Corridor is along one road route. Yes, the road route gets shot through by artillery and direct fire weapon systems, but they still get some amount of people and materials through. There's also talk about tunnels that are going out from Bakhmut. There are old Soviet tunnels that go out dozens of kilometers away from Bakhmut. So they're possibly, if the tunnels exist, then they're also being used. But anything that's coming into Bakhmut, particularly any of the enemy infantry, they're pumping in thousands of. They get turned into meat. And a lot of these guys are getting pumped in. They get turned into meat within hours because they are literally just grabbing everything that walks, talks, breathes. Short of elderly women and I can't even say young girls anymore because there are videos coming out of a young 20-year-old women being sent off for recycling. I mean, this is what it is. Let's put it this way: the West is genociding the Slavic population of Ukraine. It's flat out genociding it. The Russian-speaking population of Ukraine, which is amazing that Russian population has yet to actually wake up and figure out they're being genocided. It's the term "death by cop." When somebody can't commit suicide, kill themselves, and they run at a cop with a toy gun and get shot by the cop. So end result's still the same. This is death by Russian. So they're exterminating that entire central Ukrainian population by throwing it into this meat grinder continuously. The people that were stupid enough to wait for Ukraine to come and save them in Kherson city, which is about a third of the population, all those men have now been sent to Bakhmut. They've been rounded up and sent. So they got their liberation by Ukraine, and all of a sudden found out that they were next meat on the grinder. A lot of those guys are not gone. They're grabbing 15, 16-year-old boys. I'm sure they're probably grabbing 14-year-old boys by now. 18-year-old, 19-year-old girls, 60-plus-year-old men. I mean, it's everything that goes into the meat grinder. And Zelensky, who never planned to die of old age in Ukraine, his parents are very rich from what he's given them, living citizens of Israel. His wife and kids are in the UK, and he has a mansion in Miami. And so is the rest of the crowd, the murderous crowd surrounding him. They're just utilizing the Ukrainian people for meat and for whatever gain they can get. And these people are being sent to Bakhmut. So they're going to be sent as soldiers regardless. So the Russian incentive is why move fast and have to fight them somewhere else when they're just coming into the kill sack and getting wiped out. And Russia can produce artillery rounds day and night, and it is. So, and most of these are being killed by artillery. It may sound cynical looking at it that way, but from a military point of view, might as well kill them where they're already at in a weak position, then let them retreat out and take some other position. And they keep bringing more bodies in. Okay, we'll just keep doing this till either the bodies run out or the Ukrainian population, what's left of it, finally wakes up. Someone waking up, there's well over 20,000 POWs and growing. So, and a small percentage of them have switched sides and joined the Russian side. But that's a very small percentage, so it's not worth talking about a couple percentage points of that population. We'll wait, we'll see. So, plus on top of this, there's been several counteroffensive by portions of the reserve south of Bakhmut. They've all been beaten off. They're waiting now for the Ukrainians to launch their super duper counteroffensive, and they're going to launch it whether they're ready or not. The smart thing on the counteroffensive would have been to not launch any counteroffensive, to use those reserve troops as fire brigades to clog up any holes that are breached in your defensive line and continue trading the enemy as you're stepping back slowly. The West doesn't want that because the West, particularly Biden, needs results, and so do the rest of those leaders. The people are starting to get kind of notion that they're being used. I mean, the people of the West that are supporting all of this as their economies collapse. So the politicians demand that show something. So it's an all or nothing offensive. Where that offensive lands is a question. It may land in Bakhmut because the political situation there, it's just like Stalingrad. Hitler put a lot of emphasis on Stalingrad. Zelensky's put a lot of emphasis into Bakhmut, political emphasis, not strategic. At this point, even though it's a strategic enough object, it should have been discarded and moved back. The next position more or less ready. But they continue pushing soldiers forward and continue to turn them into meat. So okay, and then we'll wait till the main counteroffensive starts, and then break that and exploit that out, and then move forward.
Well, I want to thank the two of you. This was an amazing discussion, and also for me, pretty unsettling. It is war, and Stas, as you have kept saying, in all the times you've been on this show, along with Scott Ritter, war is awful. People die on both sides. Innocent civilians are involved in the conflict, and it's demonic. It's evil. I don't think there's any other way to describe it. Well, I want to thank the both of you. We'll look forward to future conversations. I appreciate it very much. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Regis. Thank you, Stas.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care. Goodbye.
You too.
Доброго здоровья.